Let's stop my story and listen to what you've done.
I was trying to persuade someone
to
that bouncers had a dream.
Yeah.
So I went on a Neighbours fan forum, and someone on the Neighbours fan forum has got every episode of Neighbours. They dug out Bouncer's dream.
Right. So
and they put it on the internet. And you can Google it. If you Google Bouncer's dream, it's there.
You've added to human knowledge.
I was a pioneer. I was the first. I'm sure someone else would have asked eventually.
Eventually, yeah. But it's just like discovering, the laws of motion. Someone would have done it eventually. But it still needed Newton.
So you're saying I'm like Newton?
Pretty much.
Science Shed! We're in the Science Shed! Science Shed! We're in the Science Shed! Come on, Steve!
Bunsen.
Burner!
Solid.
Machine!
Internal.
Combustion!
Why do we need
Steam!
Petri?
Dishes!
Oscar.
Space!
Isaac.
Newton!
Transplanting.
Nick! How are you? Nick's just had a cup of tea, so he's all relaxed.
I'm tired, right? I was just saying to Steve that I have kind of a postprandial slump. I think a lot of people have a postprandial slump. I reckon it's 10 times worse for me than the average person.
So walk us through your average afternoon. So you've come back, you've had a bit of lunch, nothing to do.
It depends what day it is, because if I'm at work, I've got to do some things, but I do them really poorly between about 2 and 4.
We've spoken about that before.
Yeah, we have. I can kind of not think straight, so I can't concentrate on papers and stuff. If it's on a Saturday, I was just talking to Maria about that. Maria, my fiance.
Fiance now. Congratulations again.
Thank you very much. And basically, I like to fall asleep in front of the telly on a Saturday afternoon after about 2 o'clock. Yeah. Usually sort of coincides with the football and sport starting. Have a little nap. And I reckon that I get, even if I have a nap for 10 minutes, I'm like twice as awake. Yeah. Yeah.
So you feel like you need a little power nap.
Yeah.
To get you going again.
Well, we've just started podcasting. It's about, actually it's knocking 4, so I'll probably perk up in the next few minutes. But I've got a cup of coffee in my hand.
It's got a cup of coffee.
I don't normally drink coffee, but I thought I needed it prior to the podcast so I can be my normal sparkling self.
Exactly. But now that we'll soon have you back.
Have you got lots of things to talk about?
I've got a few things to talk about.
I've got a few interesting nuggets.
All right, should we get on with it?
Yeah.
What's annoying?
Steve.
Nick. Look a little bit stressed. He's just relaxing. Okay. Nick's making me dinner, which is very, very kind of him, but I think we're running a little bit short on time, so he's a bit stressed about it.
Yeah, Maria's doing it.
Yeah. Maria to the rescue. Thanks,
got
Maria.
Got a beef, big lump of beef.
I'm pretty excited about it.
Some roast potatoes.
Yeah, all the good stuff.
Yeah, I couldn't get any Yorkshire puddings, but I think we've got some in the freezer.
Wicked.
We've got horseradish sauce, but I think it's from about 2015.
It's not the type of thing you buy very often, is it, horseradish?
Got plenty of mustard.
All right, well, that'll do.
Oh,
beef and mustard, good.
Days. Oh, you lucky man, making you a roast, Steve.
Thanks, Nick.
Anyway,
so I wanna talk to you about something. So over Christmas, I was, you have a bit of spare time on your hands, don't you? I thought I'd watch a movie, right? So, like normally when you watch movies, like you must do it as a scientist. You sit there and you'll suspend your disbelief a little bit.
Yeah.
Right? But like sometimes there's some things that just kind of like they just irk you, you're just like you cannot have that. I will accept that, but that is too far.
Absolutely.
I want to talk to you about one that really annoyed me. Right.
What was it?
It's about thermodynamics. It really annoyed me.
Oh no! I don't really understand thermodynamics.
Well, you'll get it. Well, so I'm watching Iron Man 3, right?
Right. Dude, I don't mean to be like pedantic, but Iron Man 3 is about a billionaire man who designs a flying suit.
Yeah,
a whole range of
you don't know what I'm like. But that's the thing. Iron Man, I'm happy with. Flying suit, I'm happy with. All of that, right? But I don't know if you've seen Iron Man 3.
Of course I haven't.
Okay, so in Iron Man 3, the baddie is Guy Pearce, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Mike from Neighbours.
Mike from Neighbours,
the owner of Bouncer the dog. Did you ever see Bouncer's Dream?
Yeah, it was amazing.
Can I just tell you,
played that to me.
I just want to let you know I'm responsible for that first appearing on the internet.
You are, because you put a call out to arms.
I went on.
All right, you got to tell the story.
I was
tell
trying
the story.
to persuade.
Go on,
someone.
tell the story. Let's stop my story and listen to what you've done.
I was trying to persuade someone.
Yeah.
To that Bouncers had a dream.
Yeah.
So I went on a Neighbours fan forum, and someone on the Neighbours fan forum has got every episode of Neighbours. They dug out Bouncer's dream.
right? So
and they put it on the internet, and you can Google it. If you Google Bouncer's Dream, it's there.
you've added to human knowledge.
I was a pioneer. I was the first. I'm sure someone else would have asked eventually.
Eventually, yeah. But it's just like discovering, like the laws of motion. Someone would have done it eventually. But it still needed
So
Newton.
you're saying I'm like Newton?
Pretty much.
In the world of
neighbours.
clips from soap operas. Tell me about thermodynamics.
Right. So he's so he's the baddie in it, Guy Pearce, right?
Pearce,
and
mate.
his like superpower is basically that he's like figured out a way of monkeying around with genes, right?
Oh right.
Right. And so
like CRISPR-Cas.
like CRISPR-Cas, exactly. So this like he can like transform him and all his like henchmen to a point that if they get shot, they kind of regenerate. They kind of glow red hot.
I should watch this film because it's like regenerative medicine.
Exactly,
stuff.
you'd love this. And like so, when their arms fall off, it kind of grows back like in real time, and you see it kind of glow red and heat. So anyway, so one of the other things they do is they're actually generating heat, so they use it to kind of melt metal. So there's one bit where there's like one henchman, he like destroys a water tower by heating it up. So he's like transferring this like red hot hand to like heat the metal. Anyway, final battle, Guy Pearce, like shirt off, massively like really red because he's got all this heat in him,
right?
And he's fighting Iron Man,
right? And
in doing that, what he does is he's like in the middle of fighting, and I'm suspending my disbelief, but in one bit he like slices through, like waves his hand across Iron Man's suit, right? And there's so much heat in his hand that he like cuts Iron Man's suit in two, just falls off him.
Well,
right?
that would tally with the earlier things you were talking about of him, cutting through metal with the heat of the hand.
So I was like, that is not possible, right? So that's what annoyed me, and I started thinking about it, right? So thermodynamics, for anyone who doesn't know, just it means.
Why did that annoy you?
I'll tell you. I'll tell you, because. So, do you know the first rule of thermodynamics is
don't talk about thermodynamics.
That's right, and that is true. So the first rule of thermodynamics is that energy cannot be created or destroyed. Right? So the idea being that the energy is conserved. Yeah. That you can turn from one, but it can just be transferred from one form to another.
Yes.
So, what he had to do there, I had to we do this in science every time. Right? We have to create a model. We have to make some assumptions. So this was my.
How could it work?
Yeah. So I said, okay. Is there enough energy in a human to be able to or how much energy would have to be in a human to be able to melt whatever Iron Man's made of?
Well, thinking about it, in the Matrix, they used human energy to power all of the machines.
They do,
didn't they? In little cocoons.
But you can do it, right? You know how many, about 2,000 calories.
How many watts does a human?
About 150 watts.
So it's like a bright light bulb.
Yeah. So it's about 2,500 calories a day. That's how much you consume.
Yeah.
2.5 and calorie is 4.2 joules.
Yeah.
And so you can convert that, and then you can work it out.
150 watts. So it's 150 joules per second.
Yeah. So
that can get a light bulb filament pretty hot, though. Thousands of degrees.
You can basically your entire energetic output could probably power a couple of.
If it was focused into a tiny bit of a light bulb filament, it can be really hot.
So
burn your hand.
So you could burn your hand.
It'd burn your hand.
Do you know? Interestingly, so I'm going to get to all the numbers in a minute. I know you're excited about the numbers.
Yeah.
So Chris Hoy, right, is is the most powerful thing the most powerful human. Right.
What's he?
His peak
watts?
output. Peak output.
Right.
2,700 watts.
Shit, that's a lot.
It is a lot, isn't
2,700. That's like a vacuum cleaner.
A kettle. Or a shit kettle.
A shit kettle. Chris Boardman is
the most powerful human being. Yeah.
Pretty
so power here.
though.
So it's a bit confusing. So power. We normally think about it. We use that as a kind of colloquialism, but in science, it has a very literal meaning. Power is kind of energy per unit time. So a watt is 1 joule, which is the unit of energy per second, right? So anyway, I'm thinking. So I got annoyed.
Just taking you aside for 1 second, I was always very annoyed in Imperial College, which is an Institute of Science and Technology. On one of the lecture theatre doors, it says, "Please turn the lights off." They use 200 watts per second.
Oh, that would annoy me. Right. So. Guy Pearce, right? We're gonna have to build. I'm gonna build a model. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna build a model back of the envelope. This is the type of thing that scientists do, right? So I'm like, so what's Iron Man's suit made of? Right.
I've got an unobtainium.
Right. It's not right.
Adamantium.
So I said, okay, let's have a guess. So I said, let's do titanium, right?
Okay.
So I looked up
lightweight,
strong. Exactly.
That's in bone implants. Actually.
Exactly, and they use it also in famously the Blackbird, the spy plane, that's all made of titanium. Very light, very strong. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought it was made of aluminium.
No. Anyway, so made it on time. So I looked up what. So then the question is, well, how do you work out how much energy you have to raise the temperature of something? And that in science, that's called the specific heat capacity, right?
Yeah, I remember that from school.
Yeah.
Oh, do I know? I wonder whether I remember. Is water like 420?
4.2 or 4,200. Yeah, it depends on if you have kilocalories or
I've got
whatever.
a weird memory for numbers.
Yeah.
It's disturbing. I can still remember the number plate of my mum's B-Reg Mini Metro in the mid-80s.
It's funny
Can you
that,
believe
isn't it? But why is that still in your brain, and your brain doesn't use that piece? Like I can still remember
'Cause I've got mental issues,
my
Steve.
childhood friends' phone numbers. They're still in there.
Yeah.
No problem at all.
Weird,
Useless when
isn't it?
I want to remember something useful.
We should
Anyway,
get a neuroscientist on to explain that to us.
we should. That'd be good. Anyway, so titanium
Yeah.
has a melting point of 1,668 degrees centigrade.
Yeah.
Right. So in order to be able to heat up titanium to its melting point, it requires a specific amount of energy per kilogram. So joules. You need to be able to heat up.
Skip to the end.
Yeah. Anyway, so the specific capacity of titanium is about 500 kilograms per. What's the unit? It's joules per gram per Kelvin, right? So you have to be able to heat up this amount of energy to raise it 1 degree.
Right.
So Iron Man's suit starts off about 25 degrees. Would you say that? Right,
Yeah.
but then we've got to heat up the titanium to 1,600 degrees.
So you just say that's 1,600.
Yeah, so we say that.
So how much
And
energy?
so, but how much that would be for so how much is the suit has he got to melt? So I had a look, and I'm guessing about 10 kilos of titanium he's got to melt. Right.
How much energy?
So that is, I did this for you. So we've got a kind of delta T, a change in temperature of about 1,643 degrees. The specific heat capacity is 554. So he has to make. That's 9 million joules. He has
9 million joules.
And then I was like, okay, well, there's going to be some inefficiency in a biological process, isn't there? So I looked up the most efficient biological process. Do you know what it is? Off the top of your head?
Most efficient biological process. Is it something that could be guessed?
Yeah, definitely.
Is it an enzymatic reaction?
Well, kinda.
Is it the ATP synthase?
No, it's photosystem 2. So so
it's close.
Yeah.
It's one of the molecules on the membrane of a chloroplast. in
Exactly.
itself, which
So
is
it's
quite
how
similar to
how
yeah.
plants.
Very ancient enzyme that pretty much
Yeah.
has been around for probably several billion years.
So I looked up in the literature, found a paper cited 800 times. Efficiency of photosystem 2 is about 40%.
Shit, is that all?
Yeah, and that's the most efficient thing we found
That's
in nature.
crap, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty crap.
All right. So let's get to the
Right. So actually, it's
9 million.
So actually,
but
it's
then you've
23 million joules, right? Because of the inefficiency there. If we say it's
23.
as efficient as the most efficient biological process.
So he could do it in a second if it was 23 million watts.
Yeah.
That's how much.
So
how long would it take if he was Chris
5.3 million calories.
Boardman or whatever?
5.3 million calories of energy it
Okay.
requires, right? Which is a Mars bar is about 260 calories, right? So
Yeah.
the energy required to split Iron Man in two from Guy Pearce is 20,460 Mars bars, right? Or if Chris Hoy peaks at 2,700 watts, it's 8,260 times more energetic than Chris Hoy.
Oh my god!
And
so
so
how
because-
long? Because he could to generate that amount of energy. How far would he have to cycle?
So
He'd have to just.
he'd have to be
divide
at
it.
his peak out.
For how long?
So that'd be it would be the 22 million divided by 200.
So it would take him a long time.
It's thousands of.
He'd very slowly melt that suit, and that's without taking account cooling
Exactly,
process.
because it will
and all
definitely
that.
cool, right? So it gets more complicated. So because energy can't be created or destroyed, right? So it means that the human body has to be producing energy. So there's no way you could do it.
I think you're
There's no way you could do it.
You know, I don't want to say the obvious, but I think you may have overthought this, Steve.
But no, it's just weird how something's easy. So Iron Man 3.
There's plenty more
Load of
ridiculous
bollocks.
stuff that goes on in films, probably in that same film.
No, but I'll believe there's a bit of technology. So Iron Man's got this little reactor on his chest or whatever, right?
that's
I'll believe. I know
nonsense.
it's nonsense, but you could pretend because it doesn't require you to violate thermodynamics. It
Oh
doesn't.
right, so but it does really.
It doesn't because you just say I have a magic piece of technology, right? That
Well,
generates a
why
load
not
of
his
power.
magic hands.
It's
He's
not
got
magic. It can't be magic
hands.
because you can't magic up energy. You
But
can't
what-
magic up 8,000-fold more.
But maybe
Even if you
there's-
just
maybe
burnt the human, it's not enough energy.
Maybe there's some process in the tissues, let's say,
Yeah.
which allows nuclear fusion to happen to create a very concentrated form of energy, which is somehow dissipated and prevented from damaging the surrounding tissues by some other magical thing.
That you don't get nuclear fusion in biology, do you?
Yeah, but you might do. Cold fusion, people are talking about for a
They
long
They
time.
didn't like. There's some you can have.
And like, if you've got special technology that you don't understand,
Yeah.
you know, maybe there's nuclear fusion in those bad boys. I mean,
Look, stop giving them the credit where the credit's due. They messed up with thermodynamics, so they mess with me.
You need to get over it. Do you want to hear a funny story, Steve?
Yeah, go on then.
It's
Nick.
not really a funny story. It's a tragic story.
Is it science related?
Yeah, it is.
All right.
I don't know whether you saw this. It was in Science.
Right.
It's an article in Science about a student. He's called Gustavo German. Have you
Right.
come across him?
Gustavo. The name sounds familiar, but I can't
He's a
put.
doctoral student in a regenerative medicine lab in
Yeah.
Harvard.
Right.
And basically, something.
Is this another story about someone being a big cheat, a big liar?
It's got that in it. It's,
Right,
it's
okay.
a controversial story.
Yeah.
So he worked in the lab of a chap called Lee Rubin, who's quite a prominent guy in the field of neural stem cells and therapies for brain and things like that. And basically, it starts off. So he's in his flat at 1 a.m. His parents are visiting. Police came to his door with an order to take him for psychiatric evaluation with a
Right.
view to sectioning him. He's otherwise a totally normal, no mental health issues.
Wow.
before.
Okay.
So they take him away on a stretcher to
Yeah.
the hospital, forcibly. He's got no choice in the matter.
Okay.
On the orders of Harvard University
Wow.
to get mentally assessed. There's nothing wrong with him, this dude, basically.
So well, wait. Where does that come from? No one. You don't. The
Totally
crazy.
weird.
The crazies don't turn up at your door and just
No.
take you away.
So there's a long backstory behind it.
Uh huh.
So this guy, he's a doctoral student in this guy Lee Rubin's lab,
Yeah.
and essentially what had happened was there'd been a falling out between him and his supervisor. He's a PhD student, his
Yeah.
supervisor, that had run on for a long time, and it culminated a couple of years previously in him accusing the student accusing
His
the lab
boss.
head of making up data in a publication in quite a high impact journal.
And so this was a public. He'd done.
It was an internal university thing,
Right, okay.
And it was investigated.
Which obviously is a big no-no in science. Yeah.
Yeah, so the instigation of this researcher.
But people take those. I guess what I'm saying is people take those things very seriously, right?
Oh, yeah.
Accusations or something
Well,
like that.
you lose
They-
your job and your livelihood if you get found guilty.
Yeah, I mean,
and
it's
could go to
complete-
jail. I mean,
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's what he'd done previously because he obviously had some he felt that it was correct that the guy, this lab head, had done something dodgy. Anyway, that he didn't. That was thrown out. There was
Right.
nothing in it.
So there was no malpractice there.
But basically, what ultimately had happened was this guy Rubin, and this was proven by a judge. So this went to court. Rubin obviously didn't like this student after that had happened.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, he was still working in the lab. So he got other members of the lab to. He had the opinion that this guy was getting more erratic in his behaviour.
Right.
And stopped coming to the lab for a while. And he and some other people had gone to the Harvard kind of internal affairs people and said, we think he's not well. We think this student has gone a bit, he's losing it.
So it's like.
So they got, his lab boss got these people to go round with the suspicion that he was insane to have him sectioned.
Wow. That is a good thing. So like.
This was last year. This is relatively
Oh my god!
recently.
So basically, if you could just like, it's just a really way of getting out of not doing any work. You can just get your boss sectioned, or vice versa, right?
I've thought about it many times. Maybe it'll happen to you with your 7 a.m. interview.
Yeah, exactly.
7 a.m. meeting, sorry. Anyway, so it goes further than that, though.
Yeah.
So basically, because this had happened, he was obviously cheesed off that this had been reported.
Yeah.
So he basically took him to court, took his lab boss to court.
Right.
Right? And the judge upheld the complaint. And I've got what was the judge?
To me,
said?
that's totally fair. If my boss tried to have me sectioned, I think that is grounds for.
The judge found Rubin, the lab head, was motivated by bias and revenge, not by a legitimate interest in keeping Gustavo German, safe. So he'd done it deliberately. The judge had felt
Right.
to try and get one over on him, get him sectioned. Anyway, do you know what's happened now?
Scientists are so. It depresses me, right?
Nuts.
That they think that that's a legitimate way to behave, rather than having a conversation. Like, it's obviously going to be a man as well. It's never going to be a woman, because a woman will just talk to someone like a human being.
I don't know.
But men,
I've met.
but
I'm
men,
not
it's
totally
just,
sure
but
about
like,
that.
it's just come in and you could just like rather than have a conversation about someone's work ethic, you try and get them sectioned.
Yeah. Anyway, so do you know what the upshot is?
Right, gone in.
So this guy Gustavo German has to be given all facilities in order for him to complete his PhD. So he has to be allowed in the lab. He has to have access to, for instance, the transgenic mouse that he was working on.
Right.
All of the materials that has to be provided from him. Do you know what's happened to Lee Rubin?
He's
He's got a restraining order. He's restrained from being within 30. It's very specific. For some reason, 30.5 meters from him. From this.
So he has to leave his own lab.
He can't be in the lab when the other dude's there.
So he has to leave his own lab.
So when the other guy decides he wants to come in and do some experiments, he's legally not allowed to be within 30.5 meters of him.
I like how specific.
I don't know
that
whether
is.
that's in a flat circle or a radius. I don't know.
Or
like
sphere,
a
a D-dimensional
like
sphere,
2
yeah.
floors down or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically that's where it is at the moment. So Lee Rubin is appealing this decision.
I think that's
But
probably
in
fair
the meantime-
grounds.
in the
Because if
meantime-
he can't do his job.
He
If
can't. No, he can't. But then
I'll just go on holiday. That's what you should do.
I don't know what the hell he's going to do. It's obviously
It sounds like this guy.
disaster. For
It sounds like
Harvard.
this guy needs a holiday. If you're
don't know.
going to try and section your student, you're probably working too much.
I don't know. So this article that I'd read it. It was in Science only a couple of days ago,
Yeah.
and it's written by one of the journalists on an excellent website called Retraction Watch. Have you
Oh, I
read
like that.
Retraction
Yeah, I
Watch?
love retraction.
So Retraction Watch just looks for like really, tales of woe from science
Yeah.
when things have gone politically up shit creek. So the journalist who's reported this was Alison McCook. So she's got a good scoop here. It's a great story, and you can look at this I think you can look at it for free on the internet if you just Google Gustavo German. It's a fascinating story, and it rumbles on.
Oh, really? More
Well,
to
I don't
come.
know.
More to
see.
come.
We'll look back.
We should have an
we'll look back
update.
in another year. Yeah.
All right. Oh, well, right. I suppose we better get going to start sectioning people.
7 a.m. tomorrow, Steve.
So, Nick, science, back in the game.
Oh, sorry. Here I am.
So,
I'm back again.
We had someone that came to give a talk in the department. And I thought I'd talk to you about. It's quite interesting.
Who was
It's
it?
a guy called Ken Suslick. He's American.
Suslick.
Suslick. Yeah.
Good name.
Yeah. So he does research on sonoluminescence and acoustic cavitation.
Oh, right. That's quite relevant to some of this.
I know. So I thought we'd talk about it.
Well, I actually, even though we're recruiting for a PhD student in that sort of
Yeah.
area at the moment, I know very little about acoustics. That's why you have someone you work with who knows about it. I know
Yeah.
about bone and stem cells and biomaterials. He knows about acoustics. Educate me, Steve. Suslick.
So one of the machines we use in the lab a lot is called a sonicator.
Oh, yeah, we got one of them.
Yeah, and in fact you use them to make liposomes and things, don't you? Or
You can. So if you're working with any particulate suspension, they can clump together very easily. Sonication is a way of ensuring your solution is homogeneous, your colloidal or suspension is homogeneous.
So for anyone who doesn't know, it's basically it's like a water bath that makes a kind of high pitched noise. Is what it does. And what it's doing is it's injecting sound waves into the water, and what that does is it breaks apart small things. So if you imagine if you had like a clump of something, you could imagine shaking it, but when things get very small, you can't just shake it to disperse the particulates.
It's because on a very small scale, if you shake liquid, what breaks things apart is the shear force. So that's one. Like a liquid moving in relation to a solid. So like if you clean stuff off a surface, that's like a shear, right?
Yeah.
And when you shake up solutions and you've got lumps of stuff in them, the water moving past them will shear stuff off them or break them apart.
Yeah.
But when you've got things which are really tiny, like nanometers in size, it's absolutely negligible, the shear that happens.
Yeah,
so if you
low
shake
Reynolds
it, it
number,
doesn't do anything. But I think when you use sonication, you you cause shear forces or movements of things relative, liquids and solids relative to each other. And that can do the same job. So it's basically a way of mixing things, or shaking things up.
Shaking small things up.
Yeah.
And so the way it actually works is you take a speaker that oscillates at about 20,000 hertz. That's the typical frequency.
So that's like it happens 20,000 times every second.
Exactly. And so the human ear can hear up to about, depends upon how old you are, but about 15 to 18,000 hertz, kilohertz. So you can't really hear the frequency but a dog probably could.
Yeah,
so
that's what dog whistle is.
Yeah.
Or those things. You remember those stingers?
Oh, to annoy children.
Yeah,
they're cool. Yeah.
We did that. I went to a thing once, Ig Nobel Prize things at Imperial College, and they tested the audience. They played the noise that one of the stingers makes. So this is a loudspeaker outside a shop if you want to get rid of kids.
Yeah.
The idea is that only the kids can hear this really annoying high-pitched sound, and your average sort of conservative telegraph reading punter can't hear it, so just walks past. So it gets rid of the
quite
kids.
mean, isn't it? If we did that the other way around,
I think there was some
human right,
some violation or something. But anyway, they played it in this thing, and some people could hear it.
You can imagine playing.
I couldn't hear it.
You can imagine playing sound into water, but what they do at a specific frequency. But what it does is it does this process called cavitation in water. So if you imagine you take a propeller and you kind of you submerged a propeller in water and you spin it really quickly, and you did a slow motion movie of it. What you see is at the tips of the propeller, you start to see bubbles forming. And that's because basically the propeller's moving through the fluid at such a point that it allows that you generate a region of low pressure such that a kind of gas forms, right? And that's exactly what happens in these sonicators. And
because you're moving the liquid basically when you vibrate it.
Yeah, exactly. You can imagine sloshing a liquid backwards and forwards, like just if you're in the bath or something. But imagine moving that faster and faster and faster up to 20,000 times a second. And at that point, what you see is a bubble just spontaneously forms. And what he was doing is these really interesting experiments. Is he was looking at those bubbles, and some of those bubbles have really interesting properties. So one of them is what you can do is you can do spectroscopy on those bubbles. So you can shine light on them and look at where the electrons are and actually what's going on with the water when you play this sound through it. And when you do that, you can actually measure things like the local temperature by looking at the ratio of some of these things. And the temperature that so basically what happens is you put sound through water, it forms a bubble, and then very quickly that bubble collapses back, right? The bubble doesn't stay there forever. You just see a tiny little bubble. But in doing so, it makes incredibly hot temperatures, on the order of, it's like hotter than the surface of the sun, when they collapse in a very small localized region.
Tiny little area.
Yeah. And for a very brief amount of time. So for about, and we can measure this, right? So it's about 5 nanoseconds, a typical acoustic cavitation event. So that's 5 billionths of a second that you form this bubble and then it collapses. And in that 5 billionths of a second, it gives out about, roughly, it depends upon the conditions, but about 5,000 Kelvin, right? So it's about 5,000 degrees, which is, hotter than the surface of the sun. And then it cools in that period of time too. So the cooling rate is super, super hot and then super, super cold. It's actually 10 to the 12 kelvins per second.
Because there's so little of it.
Exactly.
It's just a tiny volume.
So it's a tiny little bubble that gets dispersed really quickly. But you can actually do these, it's incredible. So you get these so they call them quite often a star in a jar, right? So you can watch all these kind of bubbles forming, and sometimes they give out light because the temperature's so hot. But it's kind of strange to think about, because if you put your hand in a sonicator, it would just be room temperature.
Yeah, it wouldn't hurt.
Yeah, but what you're doing is in the bubble, you're making these incredibly high forces, incredibly high temperature gradients, and cooling incredibly quickly, much faster than that kind of cooling rate is faster than anything that we'd use in engineering at all. Yeah. So you think about it, it's just a bath. It's just interesting to think about that we take a bath and we just plug a speaker on the side. But actually, if you go and actually think about what's going on, that you get this incredible different world that's just happening on this tiny scale.
So if you were like a tiny little person that was 5 nanometers high walking around, you're just constantly getting fried if you were in a sonicator.
It would be I suppose it would be like an electric shock or something. It would just be incredibly hot for a short period of time.
Yeah, weird.
It's kind of weird to think about, isn't it? It'd be constant, prickly heat or something. What it would be.
I mean, those bubbles. There's a lot of applications of them as well. Like you can do things. So you can use bubbles to image stuff. Yeah. So there's diagnostic use of bubbles. So you inject them into the bloodstream, and you can image where blood vessels are, because you can use ultrasound. When you measure you can
Look at
a
baby
baby in
yeah.
the womb with ultrasound. You can use that to image bubbles as well because they're basically contrast agents. They allow you to
because
see.
the sound doesn't travel through the air as well as it does through the liquid.
Yeah, there's a big difference interfaces. So ultrasound's very good at picking up layers where one type of material turns into another. So if you go from water to air, there's a very big signal you get from it.
Right.
So you can inject the bubble. And you can see tumours and things like that to use them for. But people are starting to use them based on what you're just talking about.
Yeah.
To for one example is killing cancer cells.
Right.
So the idea there is you use sometimes micro bubbles.
Yeah.
Other times you can use different types of volatile organic materials, droplets.
Yeah.
And you can actually make them vaporize. So you can direct ultrasound. Would you
To a
call
specific
it
areas.
to a sort of specific area, and those droplets will suddenly cavitate.
Yeah.
Like you said, they suddenly vaporize.
Yeah.
Turn into a bubble. Gives out a lot of heat. Can give out a lot of heat. So you can do things
So
like
there's to kind of locally heat the cells.
you could direct the sound at the cancer.
Yeah.
You can locally sort of cause that phase transition. It gets very hot, the cancer cells will die or something.
Yeah.
You can also do things like you can put nasty drugs in them, so you can localize when the bubbles pop.
Yeah.
They release some nasty drug which will kill the cancer cells at the same time. So,
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So sometimes the people that work on it, they call it star in a jar because they glow and it's exactly. And the temperatures we're reaching are that of the star.
Like the fire of Galadriel. Frodo, when all other lights go out, use the fire of Galadriel against Shelob the spider.
TheScienceShed! We're in the TheScienceShed! TheScienceShed! We're in the TheScienceShed! Come on, Steve!
Bunsen,
Burner!
Dolly,
Machine!
internal.
Combustion!
Why do we need
Steam!
Petri,
Dishes!
Austin,
Space!
Isaac,
Newton!
Constantin?
Nick, we've come to the end.
Oh, I really hate this time of.
Do you know, like when I listen to the Science Shed, and sometimes this is what happens, listeners, is that sometimes Nick produces the podcast and sometimes I edit it together.
Much
And
better when I do.
When Nick does it, it's obviously much better. But when he's doing it, I'm almost a bit anxious when he's going to play that final music because I'm just like, is this going to be the end or are we going to get some more?
Oh well, that's good though because
then-
it's exciting.
Yeah, and that music will have just played for the people listening to it now. And I feel sorry
Yeah.
for them.
Oh, I'm very sorry for them as well.
Yeah, well,
But, we'll be back in 2 weeks, so it doesn't matter.
that's right. And if they've got if they want to contact us in any way, they can do it over Twitter, can't they?
Yeah, they can contact me at the Evans Lab.
And I'm Steve the Chemist. So we're also now on YouTube. We got a YouTube channel, which is basically just me uploading the podcast.
There's a few of me doing some kind of non-nude dancing in my pants.
We should do
Seeing
that and just
wobbling
upload that. And I think what we're going to try and do in the future is maybe record us doing the podcast so you can literally see Nick, you can see Nick's face and my face.
I don't think they want to see that.
Oh, well, we can try it.
Anyway, till next time, guys.
Bye-bye.